Dry, chilly air in the eastern United States. The new week looks like it's going to be a gloom and doom type of week from the southern plains to the northeast. Long range blocking pattern continues to strengthen, and all of that and so much more. You'll be amazed on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area with everything you need to make sure you're in good shape this winter. Long Island's largest rock salt source, serving the entire area. In case you can't find it where you are, all the great snow and ice melt products, a brand new snowblower under the Christmas tree, batteries not included, so you have to pick it up. And also, if you need a new generator, 631-756-1125 is the phone number, and the website is.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes, as he slurps his, yes, as you slurp your tea.
Now, we want to be professional now, Joe. These are, after all, our sponsors. And the website is omnitruevalue.com. Sans the slurp.
Yeah. All right. I'm having some audio issues here, folks, so you might be hearing me twice. I'm hearing me twice, so this is going to be fun. Going ahead with the show.
I don't hear you twice, but of course I'm not one of the regular viewers. I'm just simply sitting here watching you. You sure everything is all? Maybe it's something that had to do with some kind of a Windows update that took place overnight.
I forgot to. It was very simple. I forgot to turn my headsets on. That's why I couldn't hear you. Okay. Well, we're all here now, so that's a good thing. And
yes.
Well, let me just say, Joe, it's Sunday, December the 4th at 11:08 Eastern Time, and I've already gotten the long slew of winter's over, winter cancels from a few people. I mean, honest to God, I think sometimes I don't want to sound condescending and insulting, but can we just not act like 5-year-olds? That you didn't get your frosted flakes with extra sugar on time?
It's the 4th of December. So we've still got a lot of winter ahead of us. And what more can I possibly say except things will be changing probably as the month progresses. And yeah, I agree with you. This week looks like a week of gloom and doom from the standpoint that we're not going to see very much in the way of sun. And also we're going to have some rain, not snow, or precipitation. I was kind of confused last night.
Not according to WPC, though, and the European for the end of the week. But we'll get to that in a moment because there's a couple of points I was going to bring up.
I was about to say that one of the local TV weathercasters was, kind of teasing the fact that, if things go a different way, we could have some real significant snow at the end of the. And I'm saying, like, what are you talking about?
Well,
what are you?
They went off the European. And again, when we get to the maps, we'll explain we'll get into this. WPC actually has a fairly large area. Not everybody's included in it, but has a fairly large area of a 10 to 30% chance of at least a quarter of an inch of snow and sleet for Friday into Saturday. Now, in my mind, it just sort of it really kind of boils down to the way the models are or aren't handling this developing block, and the word terrible comes to mind because we go from runs like yesterday's Dayside GFS, which basically had 5 systems in the next 16 days of various strengths passing by to our south, including a 960 low east of Atlantic City and south of Montauk, sometime around 12 days from now or 13 days from now. Then on the next run, it can't handle the block at all. It doesn't appear to even recognize it and takes lows from the Great Lakes into New England with cold fronts coming through. That to me is wrong. I just think that part of the equation is wrong. I think it's a matter of the European, where it strengthens this next high coming down, and we'll show everybody this on the maps. It strengthens the next high after uh, Wednesday, Thursday, and bleeds cold air southward through New England. A low that comes out of the southern plains, goes to Ohio, hits the block, can't go anywhere, redevelops in Chesapeake Bay. I sort of could see how it can happen. It's one of these things that you just have to wait day by day to see how the models are handling whatever cold air there might be. But I would not go out and say, I certainly wouldn't go out at this point to say anything using the word significant. I don't know how you can say that with such a lack of with such confidence. I mean, I just wouldn't. I would just would never put it that way.
Things change so quickly, or from run to run, especially at this time of the year. And I'll say it again. I'll say it until I'm until I'm not here anymore.
Blue in the
Uh,
face.
Blue in the face. Yeah, I mean, I would not go much beyond or talk about weather events much beyond 5 days, because after 5 days, the weather models, the various model guidance changes on literally a run to run basis as to what may happen beyond day 5. And yeah, anything can happen on Friday. As you just said, those who are suggesting snow are probably in the European camp, but you can't go that way. You've got to uh, hope and wait for most of the model guidance to be on the same page. And when they're not on the same page and there's discrepancies, then you really can't, you got to say, well, there's a lot of uncertainty and we'll see what happens beyond whatever day you're looking at.
All right. Shall we start the day off with an interesting chart?
Yes.
So we've been talking about one of the things I really love about weather is that it has a wonderful way of shaming people, especially especially folks who make these sort of unequivocal statements with regards to how how it can snow and how it can't snow, and they'll come up with these absolutes. Oh, if we don't have a negative NAO and a positive PNA, and it can't snow, and on it goes. Well, Tony Gigi sent me an interesting chart. Now this is for Philadelphia, so I don't know if we ran the same charts in New York. I suspect that the numbers would be different and probably a little bit higher. They were kind of interesting here to me, and this is this is a little hard to see. I'm going to see if I can make this a little bigger. So this is a plot basically of number of storms. This is Baltimore or greater, okay? This is Baltimore or greater December snowstorms, okay? December snowstorms, not January, not February, okay? So we have all various different combinations here. So here's a combination of where we have a negative a negative Arctic oscillation and a positive Pacific North America index, or a positive PNA. 53% of 4-inch or more snowstorms occurred in that with that condition. Okay. The biggest was an 18-inch snowfall. Now, if you've got the positive Arctic oscillation and a positive Pacific North America index, 26% have occurred, the biggest being 8.4. And on, the next, this is one chart. Let me see if I can get his other chart here. Just a moment. He sent one for Philadelphia too. Where did he go? Where did it go? Okay, so here's how it kind of summarizes for Philadelphia. First of all, there have been 3 events of 10 inches or more in 72 years in Philadelphia. I suspect if we looked at New York State, it's probably higher. Okay. All 3 of those events, by the way, had a positive PNA, and 2 of the 3, not all 3, but 2 of the 3 had a negative NAO. 8 events of 6 inches to 10 inches or more. 4 had a positive PNA, negative NAO. 1 had a positive PNA and a positive NAO. Now, here's the state that we're in. 1 had a negative PNA and a negative NAO, and 2 had a negative PNA and a positive NAO. So right now we have this negative PNA and a negative NAO, so it's on the lowest end of that bunch, but something did happen with that combination. So it's just kind of interesting here when I was just kind of, thanks to Tony Gigi for sending me that. Uh, the teleconnections are not the end all when it comes. They're only part of the equation. The blocking pattern is only part of the equation. The state of the Pacific is only part of the equation. It's not a simple matter of saying if you have A and B, the outcome will be C. So everybody needs to sort of get a grip on things and stop jumping off the deep end.
And so I don't know how to answer that. I don't. What can you say? Excuse me. I mean, there are going to be people who are going to, say, it's all over. It doesn't matter what may be coming or whatever. I just have this feeling, this idea that the winter is not going to come the way I want it to come or whatever. Blah 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 blah. And
yeah,
they throw in the towel, and then that's it. You and I are done for the rest of the year.
I know. That's just basically what it boils down to. And I was looking at the teleconnections from this morning. I'm going to leave myself on the screen because you don't need to see the left side, and I don't want to reset myself. So right now, we are at a deeply negative state on the Pacific North America Index, and it's 2 standard deviations negative. So you're ridging in the east, troughing in the west. It's been pretty obvious. And from here, the PNA actually rises, and in a sort of uneven fashion, it goes up, takes a little blip down, and then just keeps going up toward the neutral line. So we might want to watch that time frame after December 15th. Forget about whatever's going to happen at the end of this week, but we're going to be in a rising PNA, by the way, going through this week, which is kind of interesting because it peaks around Friday or Saturday, which is about the time that the European has this little event here. Then it makes that dip, and then it rises up toward the neutral line. Oftentimes, when you get when you get these teleconnections going from a deeply negative to, they make this quick rise toward the neutral line, or the other way around, where it's strongly positive and they take a fast dip to the neutral line. When it gets to near the neutral line, is usually some kind of storm systems developing somewhere. So, by the way, this is I stand corrected. By the way, this is the NAO. This is the NAO that I have up. I don't know why the Climate Prediction Center folks have the way they have the URLs. They've got PNA/NAO, and then they got NAO/NAO, and I get confused sometimes when they do that sort of stuff. They couldn't just keep it simple. I
looked at the discussion, the long range discussion, and they are suggesting actually one person, his name is Schitzel. Schechtel. I'm not sure exactly how you would pronounce the gentleman's name.
Well, you could pronounce it dangerously, and I don't think that's the way it's pronounced. So, but go on.
But it's SCHICHTEL. I don't know how you would pronounce that. But he does. Schittel, or I don't know. Anyway, the pattern, he says, looks to offer another emerging favorable setup for additional rainfall over the east central U.S. by next weekend. What they're talking about, or what he's talking about, is a pattern that seems to favor rain. He doesn't mention anything about the possibility of snow or mixed rain and snow or frozen precipitation. He's just talking flat out rain possible for next weekend as this system, develops and moves just underneath that dome of high pressure that's located up over eastern Canada. So, usually you see in these discussions some hints that maybe something is going to be coming our way in a winter type pattern or semi-winter pattern, but he doesn't. He just simply says there's a chance for more rain for the Northeast next weekend.
When did he write this?
This was written about 2 a.m. Sunday, December 4.
Okay.
this
So,
morning.
so I wonder if WPC on their long range, I wonder if they wrote anything. Do they write a discussion on the long range snow outlook?
I didn't check the long range snow outlook discussion. I'm looking at the overview, the extended forecast discussion from College Park, Maryland, which gives the overview of long range for the next 5 or 6 days across the country. But I did not see. But again, they may be working. Again, we mentioned this the other day, how one division is at odds with the other division as to what may eventually transpire. One may be saying snow, the other may be saying rain, the other, blah blah blah.
Well, look, here's what I say. We have a blocking pattern. The models are in absolute state of hell, absolute state of volatility, in both in either direction. And we're just going to have to wait and see over the next 2 days. Again, I'll just go back to what I said at the beginning. I could sort of see how the European can happen, but I can also see how it can't happen because the model may be overstating the block, the GFS may be understating the block, maybe there's a compromise in order somewhere in here. But for now, uh, this is at the end of this coming week, so we got some time. In the meantime, I want to acknowledge Robert Russo and Izzy D, both for hitting the Super Chat tip jar nice and early, and for that, we thank you both very much. So, on that particular note, gloom and doom. By the way, there's nothing unusual about the weather we're having here in early December. Let me make that point here. It's 4 days into the month. There's nothing there's nothing here that stands out to me in either direction, be it warm or cold. This is sort of a transition time uh, as we get into the winter season. So if you're watching and you're thinking, why hasn't it snowed yet? It's because most times it doesn't. And by the way, Timothy Veltman sent me a really really good post about that. He said if you look at the Climos for year-to-date snow for seasonal snowfall to date through December 4th, if you look at most of the Northeast, and that includes Buffalo, that includes Albany, Boston, and a whole bunch of other places, it's under 6 inches. And if you way under 6 inches, and in many cases, way under 3 inches. So there's nothing here that you need to concern yourself with at the very beginning of December. What you should be concerning yourself with, Joe, is the fact that we have a nice day across much of the Northeast, other than some patchy lake effect clouds that are coming in off Lake Ontario. But other than that, most areas are partly to mostly sunny. And you can also see the beginnings, a stream of subtropical moisture coming in off from Baja California into the southwest and streaming into the southern plains and heading toward North Carolina. That's the beginnings of the next round of weather systems that are going to start impacting weather in the eastern U.S. on Tuesday.
Right. And Tuesday looks like a day, and also moderating temperatures. I mean, the temperatures look like they're going to be heading back up again during this week. And then the sad part about it is they're moderating, but they're also being accompanied by, as you would say, gloom and doom, a lot of cloud cover, and also some wet weather in the form of some showery rains. It would be nice to have. It would be nice to have one of those days we had a couple of weeks ago where it was flirting with 70 with sunshine. That's not going to happen. But temperatures are going to be, roaming back up into the mid and upper 50s by Tuesday and especially Wednesday. But again, we're going to have to deal with clouds, and we're also going to deal with a certain amount of precipitation as well.
Okay, and speaking of which, when we take a look at the current radar, in the Northeast, it's fairly quiet. You see a little bit of lake effect there up in north central New York, but otherwise not much happening. Some precip aloft in Kentucky and in southern Kentucky, Tennessee, and in western North Carolina. I'm socked in with clouds here. It's just an absolutely gloomy day, and to the west, we're starting to see the beginnings of some rain that is developing in Arkansas, back into southeast Oklahoma, across northern Texas. That's that stream of clouds you saw. It goes all the way back to some heavier rains that are going on in southeastern Arizona. And then you have precipitation up and down California, and into the Pacific Northwest as another one of these systems comes off the Pacific coast and moves inland. So that's sort of setting things up for later this week with these systems coming in from the west and sort of rolling along. The WPC folks have, so I'm going to break this up here. So we'll go to day 3. That's Tuesday into Wednesday, and you can see there's a half to 3/4 of an inch from central New Jersey and eastern PA northeastward up into central New England and back into New York State along, say, I-87 and points east. Also, another area of 3/4 of an inch to an inch in North Georgia, eastern and central Tennessee, southern Kentucky, westernmost North Carolina. Not a whole lot of precip up in the northern plains or up into Montana. Again, this is just from Tuesday into Wednesday that we're looking at. So this is just one particular day. And the 7-day totals are actually rather substantial because there's going to be more after Tuesday. So looking at an inch and a half of liquid plus for most of northeast PA to southern New England and up in the Hudson Valley. 3 to 4 inches, Joe, 3 to 4 inches from eastern Oklahoma east to eastern Tennessee and northern Georgia. And on the northern flank, all the way up, covering most of the state of Kentucky, southernmost Illinois and Indiana, and southern Missouri. And in the Pacific Northwest, several to many inches, extending down even into northern and central California and into the Sierra Nevadas, where it's been snowing forever and ever over there, it seems. And here's WPC's snowfall forecast of probability of at least 2. And again, it continues to be mostly in the west and in some places getting to almost 100% probability of at least 2. If we get a little more robust and put the probability of at least 8 in the Sierra Nevadas and parts of the northern Rockies, not a whole lot of anything going on in the east. I mean, even if I take the probability of 2, this is for the next 72 hours ending Wednesday morning, they've got nothing. There's not a flake, not an ice pellet anywhere except on the northern part of the upper peninsula of Michigan. But on the long range, and this is where they got they got brave, I guess, maybe, and they've got the probability. This is the probability of at least 1/4 of an inch of liquid equivalent of snow or sleet. So let's just call it the probability of at least 2 or 3. Much of Pennsylvania, except the southeast, northern New Jersey, except the northeast, all of Connecticut, the Hudson Valley on the south side of your house, Joe, northward, is where the southern line goes on the map and covers much of the Hudson Valley all the way up to Albany, all the way up into central and western New York, and even extending up into central New England and as far south as northern Maryland. So I thought this was a brave forecast, and I don't mean that to mean it was in a positive or negative way. It's kind of gutsy when only one model is showing this, so you sort of have decided that that's the one that's going to be correct, and they went with it.
Yeah, I really, I really don't know, why they're doing this, because in my opinion, now this is just one man's opinion or one person's opinion. I honestly don't think it's going to get cold enough for any flakiness or any kind of mixed precipitation at all by the end of the week, and that includes looking at the European. The European does have a system. Actually, it has a storm that looks like it's going to be crossing over from the Ohio Valley and then kind of jumps over to the Mid-Atlantic off of Virginia Beach, and then that system intensifies as it moves east-southeast out over the Atlantic Ocean. But the temperatures, in my mind, unless they're thinking about a shallow layer of cold air, the temperatures to me look like they're just going to be not even marginally cold, but just a little bit too mild for any kind of, even up into New England. So I don't know. I'm scratching my head. And that gentleman, Scheistel, or whatever his name is, or however you pronounce it.
Scheitel.
Scheitel?
Yes.
Scheitel.
Yes, because the alternative, Joe, is a problem. So without asking him, the alternative is a problem. So let's just say Scheitel.
Okay, we'll say that, even though it may not be the correct way of pronouncing it. Maybe we can get him on the phone and call him and ask him, how do you pronounce your name? The world needs to know. Anyway, he's saying don't worry about it. It's going to be just rain for the Northeast
All right.
next weekend. So
Let's look at the upper air. The new GFS is in. Okay. So for you block lovers, you probably could not get a stronger looking block than what we have here on the map. There is a an upper high that is building just to the southeast of Greenland, between Greenland and Iceland, pushing up toward the northwest into the Arctic region. It's about as strong as you could ever see an upper high. You've got a vortex sitting in northern parts of Hudson Bay. You've got a strong trough that's coming into California, swinging in, ridging, trying to get into northwest Canada, but it's a little bit further to the east than you would like. But at least there's ridging there enough so that you're getting some cold air. The problem is that cold air, now this is for tomorrow afternoon. The problem is that the core of this colder air is still still up to the north. That upper low that's sitting in Hudson Bay would you want it to be closer to Lake Superior than sitting up that far north. That would allow much more colder air to move into the eastern part of the United States, at least maybe down to the latitude of Virginia, North Carolina. But that, in this case, the upper low is too far north. And in fact, it actually migrates westward as we move into Tuesday. So that allows some ridging. You'll notice, by the way, that there's a cutoff low that forms east of Bermuda. And that's helping to build a ridge in the Gulf of Mexico, kind of having this ridge that's off the southeast coast and runs up towards Newfoundland. So that's another issue here. You've got traffic in the Atlantic in the wrong spot because it's creating that ridging there in the east. And then as we go into Friday, there's a fairly strong little shortwave that comes out of this mess in California that moves moves through the south central plains and into the Ohio Valley, and suddenly you got, Joe, a wrapped up little cutoff low sitting near Cape May by early Saturday morning,
right.
which is kind of interesting. And that just sits there, eventually gets kicked out because another trough replaces it with another low that looks like it's cutting off in Virginia sometime around Monday the 12th, Tuesday the 13th. Boy, look at that. It's got a 1, 2, what is that? I got to get closer. So this is the new GFS this is kind of going back to yesterday's run where it had 5 systems and 2 of them were actually pretty impressive. So we're going to get
Eastern, Eastern U.S.
Yeah, no, I just switched. I was doing. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 contours closed, almost 8, sitting east of the Chesapeake Bay, southeast of Atlantic City, and just kind of inching its way toward the east. So let's see what it does at the surface. This is kind of funny that it does this. Listen, with that strong block up there, now even with the negative PNA, with the strong block up there, this is kind of when we went back that March when we had the strong negative PNA, strong negative NAO, strong negative EPO, which is probably the one thing that's missing here. That was that we had 4 nor'easters in, what was it, 2.5 weeks back in that March of 2018, was it?
Yeah.
I'm not saying, nothing's ever exactly the same, but it's just kind of interesting that the model's doing this. So let's roll back. So on today's run, the GFS is at least not trying to take a low up the St. Lawrence Valley. It brings a low into Ohio and western PA and then redevelops it off the New Jersey coast. I mean, this would be a raw, cold rain and wind that would set up for later Friday night and Saturday with that one. So then that goes out. Now you got this new system that develops. So now what do we have here? This is on Tuesday, December 13th. We've got a 980-ish low that forms off North Carolina, goes north, and then turns northwestward into central New Jersey, comes in from the east. So this is just ridiculous. So this would be this would be a nor'easter of some sort, if this were correct, with maybe some heavy snows up in upstate New York, if you want to believe that. Then that's as far as we've gotten.
This is crazy. It's just like that situation we were looking at a couple of weeks ago. Remember where they had that storm dropping out of nowhere, out of the north, and then going south and southeast of our area, and
Yeah.
then winding up. It's doing that again.
Well, it's got a wrapped up. I mean, because the low gets the second system, the upper low gets so wrapped up that the surface low just basically it becomes vertical with the upper low is what it does, and it does this counterclockwise rotation. This is pretty interesting if this winds up happening. Even if it's not a snow event, it would be a pretty interesting gale that would impact the Northeast and the northern Mid-Atlantic states come would be,
But it,
a week plus from now.
but the question I would have to ask is it possible that within a span of just 2 or 3 days that you have not one but two tightly wrapped? I'm going to use the term that I used to work with a guy, Jack Boston, who later did work at AccuWeather and could be heard on CBS radio here in New York. He used to call these stem winders. Is it possible to have like two stem winders so tightly wound up within a matter of a couple of days of each other? I mean, that's
Unusual, but not unheard of. I mean, it does every once in a while. You do get these storms close together like this. You've
yeah.
got what it is. It's we've got the block. Here's the thing with all of this. You've got this very very strong blocking signature that's there for basically the next 2 weeks. So you would think with a strong blocking signature that at least one event would try to happen. In this particular instance with the models, they seem to want to go with the idea of maybe two. You're right. It's unusual. It's really unusual to see two back-to-back systems. I mean, one would be this is for Friday and Saturday that goes out, but this one's not as strong as the first one, obviously. And the next one follows would be Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday. Just like you said, just a handful of days later, there's yet another deep trough that's dropping in behind that one. And by the way, I'm noticing at least out at 240 hours now, you've got a ridge in the west popping up. Now the PNA has got to be going positive because I'm looking at this and I'm saying, you got a deep trough off the west coast and you got a ridge that's building up from the Rockies on northwestward into Canada, while you still have this blocky signature. You can see it here. It's all blocky there. Northeastern Canada, all the way up into Greenland and Iceland, there's nothing but high pressure there. And this is a very dynamic pattern in a lot of respects. It's just a question of if there's no cold air, obviously it would be rain, but that doesn't mean we're not going to wind up with two rather potent gale centers down the road, or at least maybe one potent gale center down the road.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. Next weekend could be an awfully interesting weekend as to what we may or may not see, and hopefully things will become coming more into focus. I honestly, so there are two things now that I honestly cannot buy into. One, the fact that by next Friday it's going to be cold enough for snow in our area, or if not snow, maybe a mixed precipitation pattern. And the other thing is trying to figure out how this pattern next weekend is going to work out as to whether or not we have one or two. By the way, what is the Canadian? Are our friends in Canada have their model?
Well, let's. I'm gonna give the Canadian an extra 2 minutes. Let's look at the icon because most of the icon is out. So let's see what the icon is doing.
All right.
Which overnight, by the way, took this first system and basically minored it out. So here's your rain for Tuesday coming in and for Wednesday. Then it goes out. High builds in. There's a 1037 high, 38-ish high south of James Bay. There's a low coming out of Oklahoma into southern Indiana. There's the snow in Pennsylvania. But it minors that system out, Joe. It just kind of takes the low into southern Ohio, and then all of a sudden there's a weak low center sitting in eastern North Carolina. It's just got a very minor-looking system there. In fact,
that kind of looks like what the European was doing. Taking the Ohio Valley system, putting it off of Virginia Beach, and then sending it on its merry way out.
Right, but the European
ocean.
at least had a pretty vibrant shortwave that produced more precip than the than what the icon did. And then the high that goes up into northeastern Quebec just basically sits there and then just builds back southward. The 540 thickness actually winds up dropping eventually down into southern Virginia. This would probably suggest at least that maybe there'll be some low-level cold air that'll come down. The bottom part of the atmosphere may wind up, like you said earlier, maybe a shallow area of cold air that's going to be, pushing southward down into the mid-Atlantic states. After that goes by. And then it's got another low that's getting ready to come out. It's got a 1,000 millibar low sitting north of Oklahoma City next Sunday. Higher pressures all the way up to its northeast. It's hard for me to imagine how this could wind up going to the west if that high is not moving. That's an interesting detail. Let's look at the Canadian. Let's see what the Canadian's doing. Oh God. And we chose to do this for a living. We could have just been like paper pushers. Make sure the boxes are checked and stamp it, and then we would move it on. No, we had to go into a business where you're never certain of anything.
Izzy D says, meh. I'm not intrigued in Coastal Plain. Joe Rayo, I feel like you're model hugging too early in the game, not trying to criticize, just stating. Well, it's not my model hugging.
Nobody's model hugging here. Nobody's model hugging. Now that here's another twist. So let's look at the Canadian, Joe. The Canadian is kind of like the European. It has a more vibrant looking low that moves into southern Ohio and West Virginia, and the high is a 1048 high, building south down to Labrador, from Labrador, okay? That low is forced southeastward. You got some blue snow in Pennsylvania, rain central New Jersey south that never really gets further north than that. Just like the icon, suddenly there's a low east of North Carolina and then goes southeast toward Bermuda and out. Then the next system comes into that high. So one low goes up. A low goes up toward Lake Superior, so it's just kind of a cold front, really, for Sunday the 12th. And there's this big cold high that's dropping down into Montana with colder air through the lakes and down into the lower Mississippi Valley. And then all of a sudden, there's 1,000. That front goes by, a wave gets left behind. There's 1,005 low that's near Charleston, with a diving trough and a 504 thickness into Illinois, and suddenly you've got a 97 low at Hatteras, Joe, with snow over me in Kentucky, western North Carolina, western and northern Virginia. It's got light blue snow in northern New Jersey to southeastern PA on the northern edge. Let me look at the 500. Oh, look at Jesus! Look at I just put the 500 on the screen here on the Canadian, Joe, at 240 hours. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's just crazy. So we got to get another. Here's the thing. Here's the takeaway. I understand everything that you've said. I don't really necessarily disagree with anything that you've said with regards to the overall flavor of things. But you have to admit, with this block out there, out there in the North Atlantic, and as strong as it is, you certainly can see how something could happen if the pieces came together in the wrong way.
Right.
You have to concede that there's a lot going on here. It's just that the models don't seem to know, and they're not going to know. I think that's my takeaway on this, is that it's a very dynamic looking pattern. And I would tend to think that one of these systems is liable to do something in some form or another.
Well, all right.
I mean, you don't honestly think we're just going to be cold and dry, kiss it goodbye for the next 14 days.
No. It's just, shaking my head here trying to figure this whole thing out.
You can't.
And you can't, because you know why? Because all of what we're looking at is happening beyond 5 days, folks. And meanwhile, we've got TV stations here in this market saying, and on the outlook in 10 days, we're going to have,
Yeah, look, again, I'll just state it again. My takeaway: dynamic pattern. Could something happen? Sure. something could come together in one form or another sometime in the next 2 weeks. No guarantees from the management, of course, but I could see how it could happen.
I love how the Canadian, for example, at 0Z Saturday, that would be next Friday night at 7 p.m. They have a swath of snow over parts of northern and northwestern Pennsylvania. They have a storm system that's in the southwest corner of Pennsylvania. You look at this and you say to yourself, how is it possible that we would, in the New York area, possibly miss anything? We would certainly, before that night is over, get something. And what happens? Everything just suddenly shifts sharply southeast of our area, and we miss out. We get actually. This is really weird. I mean, that system that is coming in from the Ohio Valley shifts to our south and east, and meanwhile, the other system that's out over the ocean kind of backlashes us with some rain or mixed precipitation by Saturday evening. It's weird. It's a weird
Yeah.
situation. Really is.
It's a dynamic pattern that when you're looking at these things, see that I guess I get aggravated because everybody jumps from, most people, they look at this sort of stuff, they look at these models on websites and they live and die by each one, forgetting, the run that's in front of them suddenly is Bible, and the run that happened before that doesn't exist anymore. And then the new run is the way it's going to happen until the next one comes in. And I said last week, and I said this even over the weekend on some of my videos that I cut, you're gonna get a model run, and if you're a snow lover, you're gonna get a model run. You're gonna get one, and you're gonna look at it, and you're gonna go insanely crazy, only to have that emotional balloon popped 6 hours later when it does something totally different. Okay, so you're not getting an understanding of what, if that's what you're doing, you're not really doing anything. You're just looking. Okay. I'm just giving you perspective, just giving you a broad perspective of what you're looking at in terms of the overall pattern. Is that it is very dynamic. There's a lot of things going on, and Joe, this you'll definitely agree with this part, just in terms of how you, as far as analysis is concerned. Okay, it's very simple when you have a progressive west to east pattern where everything is moving along from west to east. It's much easier to figure out what's going on because you're usually basically looking at just one flow going from west to east. When you throw a block in the mix, you suddenly have at least two separate jet stream patterns to look at. Sometimes you're going to look at three different jet stream patterns. You have a lot of systems running around that's creating the traffic jam. So any one of those that changes is going to have a big impact on how the other ones behave. It's a far more difficult prospect of forecasting in a pattern this pattern that we're in. Far more difficult to forecast this than the pattern that we've had, say, for the last 2 weeks, where we've had cold front after cold front after cold front after cold front.
Right, you're absolutely right. When we're in a kind of a zonal pattern, a straight west or east pattern, then you could actually forecast on a day-to-day basis the way I used to back in the 1960s, and used to put the weather up on the blackboard in my school. Sheer extrapolation. You'd go from one day to another day to another day. Oh, it's rain over Denver, then it passed over Chicago. Tomorrow, if it keeps moving along the same track and speed, it'll be over New York. But again, the blocking is the key. And we not only have, as you pointed out, Joe, not just one block, but multiple blocking. So it makes it more difficult, especially even for a supercomputer. The ones that we rely on to make these forecasts, and they have their own set of algorithms and equations, and they come up with their own set of ideas as to how things are going to happen, which is why one model says one thing, another model says another thing, and it's why, for all intents and purposes, we have to wait. We have to wait until we're within 72 to 84 hours of the actual event to be able to say with some clarity that something is going to occur.
So, and by the way, I'm going to bring this back up because you need to see this. So I'm going to bring the GFS back up just to show you the craziness of the upper air on this particular model. So here's the system for the end of this coming week. Okay. Cut off near Atlantic City. All right. Now, the next system comes out of the plains and Rockies, undercuts the block, cuts off, and you've got a wrapped up cutoff southeast of Cape May by Tuesday the 13th. Before wasn't out far enough. I mentioned that there's another short wave that's dropping down from western Canada to Lake Winnipeg to the western lakes. That the ocean storm lifts up to the Gulf of Maine. The block is strengthening again in the Davis Strait between Labrador and Greenland. So the upper low that's near Lake Winnipeg now drops southeastward, and you got another mega cutoff off the New Jersey coast on December 16th, and a really wrapped up cutoff low. I got to see what the surface looks on this. Is a wrapped up cutoff near Cape Cod. So let's take a look. This ought to be a gem. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 contours cut off. Okay. And it's got a 967 low. That apex is, kind of does that counterclockwise loop near Cape Cod. It's got some snow back in New York State, New Jersey at certain points. It's just nuts. It's just a very nutty looking pattern. It's just a very, very dynamic, but very nutty looking going forward.
Well, what more can we say, ladies and gentlemen?
We can't.
We can't.
We can't say much more. Leon Probitsky is what we can say. Leon's hit the Super Chat tip jar. Thank you, Leon. Adam Lowe says, you have to look at what happened in December 2010 to see what is going to happen this December, as the block is similar in strength, position and strength, and Europe is going cold. Okay, and I don't disagree with you, Adam, in terms of your premise. I would just say that if that's going to happen, the Pacific side of this equation has to be a little different than what we're seeing right now. We have to get rid of the troughing in the West and get more ridging in the western part of the United States if we're going to have a repeat performance of December 2010. And you know what? It could also be the fact that we're in the first half of the month. It's a big world of difference between what happens with this pattern in the first half of December and what could happen in the second half of December, because between now and then, the average temperature, which is still in the upper 40s-ish right now, drops down to almost the upper 30s by the end of the month. So that's a significant climatological cooling that's going to go on in the next 3 weeks. So this pattern, if it's the same, if we're looking at this pattern, say, for the second half of the month, particularly the last 10 days of the month, then maybe you will have a repeat performance of December 2010.
And of course, December 2010 is the storm that is the Boxing Day snowstorm, correct?
Right.
What I call the Bloomberg.
Coming out of a long period of negative NAO and negative blocking. It was just it was a matter of time. The pattern set up 10 days before, and then the clock started running, and you just sort of knew that in a matter of time, one of the systems that was in the flow was going to wind up blowing up. I don't know if I would have ever envisioned the Boxing Day storm the way it turned out, but the pieces were there with the blocking pattern that something dynamic was going to happen somewhere, and that's where I think we're at now. We have a dynamic pattern. Something is going to happen sometime in the next several weeks somewhere. That's as good as it's going to get. Forget about what at the end of this week. I mean, that to me is not part of this the equation. I'm talking about something more than just a minor-ish system that comes through. Something more dynamic, more important.
If my memory serves me about the Boxing Day storm of 2010, up until just about 2 or 3 days before the event, there was a lot of confusion as to where and what we were going to see. And in fact, there was even a time as close as Christmas Eve,
it took it away.
That looked like that system was going to go away, go bye-bye. We weren't going to get anything. And then all of a sudden, everything fell into a pattern where we're not just going to get a snowstorm, we're going to get a big snowstorm. And in fact, I could even remember on the front page of the New York Daily News on Christmas Day, they said, get ready, there's going to be a big blizzard coming our way for tonight and tomorrow. And of course, we knew all about it, and nobody in the New York City government did anything about it, mainly because the mayor was in Bermuda somewhere, and nobody was giving orders as to who and what and where. And it turned out to be almost as bad a situation with that storm in terms of preparation in advance and in terms of actually clearing away of the storm later on, almost as bad as the Lindsay snowstorm of 1969. Now, this is history, folks. This is 2010. Not saying that that's going to be, as Joe mentioned earlier, a repeat of what we saw in 2010 going to happen again. But the way the volatility of the models are being red flagged for the second half of this month, somewhere east of the Mississippi, there's going to be some major storminess. Whether or not that's going to involve us, whether or not it's going to involve snow, whether or not it's going to be short term or long term, we're just going to have to sit back, wait, and see how things develop. But that, again, is not today, not tomorrow, not even next weekend. That is for, again, the second half of what presumably will be a very active month of weather. And, of course, we here at Joe and Joe will be following it for you right on straight through. So go into your kitchen, check out to see if you have any of that microwave popcorn or whatever. And when we get down to the second half of the month, pop the corn, sit back, relax, and watch Joe and Joe try to figure out for you what's going to be coming our way.
Yes. So let me just say really quick, best wishes to Scott Briller and Mother Briller. I haven't heard from Scott for the last few days, and I know he's busy taking care of his mom. So we send our best wishes to him and his mom. Hope everything is okay. And now, as we say goodbye, Joe, you know what you should also be spending your time the next couple of weeks doing?
Before we say goodbye, I just want to alert you and all the viewers that tomorrow and Tuesday I'm giving a library talk both nights at 7 o'clock, which means that Joe and Joe tomorrow night and Tuesday night would be at 8:30 and not our normal 7:35 time.
Thanks for telling me.
I was going to tell you after the show, but I figured the reason why the talk that I'm giving for tomorrow and Tuesday has to be with an event that is going to happen in the sky on Wednesday. And if you want, Joe, I could very quickly show a highly shortened, abridged version of what is going to be taking place. And to do that, let me just go in. We'll share the screen very quickly here and go to slideshow. And this is an event that sadly, I don't think we're going to have a chance of seeing. Could be wrong. Maybe if we get a break in the cloud cover, we'll have a chance to see this. The planet you see off in the distance there is our planet Earth, and the one that looms large in the center and the right is the planet Mars. Mars right now is about as close as it's going to get to the Earth until the year 2033. It's very bright. If you've looked out in the northeastern sky at around 8 o'clock, it shines with this brilliant yellow-orange glow. You just can't miss it. Every 26 months, we, in our earthly orbit around the sun, pass Mars. And when we do that, when we pass it, it's what we call opposition. Mars rises in the east as the sun sets in the west, high in the midnight sky, and then is setting in the west as the sun is coming up in the east. It's opposite to the sun in our sky. So on Wednesday night, we're going to have a full moon. And in fact, the full moon, if you ever think about it, is the moon that is opposite to the sun. So here's the rays of the sun coming from this direction. Here's the Earth. And the moon is in that part of the sky. We're more or less in between the moon and the sun during full moon phase. So we have that full moon coming up on Wednesday evening. Well, take a look at this. On Wednesday night, late, we're going to have an unusual alignment take place. We're going to have the sun, we're going to have the Earth, the moon, and Mars all in basically a straight line. The moon, again, will be at full phase. Mars will be at opposition to the sun and passing closest to the Earth. In fact, it's right now approximately 50 6 or 8 million miles away from the Earth, still well away from where the moon is, but close enough to appear in the sky very bright. Now, the moon is going to turn full on Wednesday night at 11:08 p.m. Mars will be at opposition to the sun just 87 minutes later. So we have an alignment, again, between the sun, the Earth, the moon, and Mars. And again, that difference between the moon turning full and Mars coming to opposition is only going to be 87 minutes. Very unusual. And that results in this. See this yellow line here? This is the lower or southern limit of what we call an occultation, or if you will, an eclipse of the planet Mars. Everybody who lives in this part of the country, anywhere above or to the left or to the west of the line, will see the full moon on Wednesday night pass directly in front of Mars, eclipsing it or hiding it for upwards to an hour. But what about these folks here below the line and to the east of the line? Well, in this area, it's going to be nothing more than a near miss. So folks who live anywhere in this region will not see the moon come in front of Mars, but will see it come very, very close. In the case of a star, when the moon covers a star, the line or the limit line between no occultation and yes, you will see an occultation is only a few hundred yards wide, because a star, from our vantage point, is nothing more than a pinpoint of light. But a planet is a measurable disk. And in this particular case, that line I showed you crossing through the United States a few moments ago is actually a path which is about 21 miles wide. So if you're anywhere north of this line, you'll see Mars get covered up by the moon. If you're anywhere south of this bottom line, you see no eclipse. You see Mars coming very close, but there's no coverage. If you're in this zone right here, if you're in Morgantown, West Virginia, if you're in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and if you go further to the north and east, up into New England, Northampton, Gardner, Fitchburg in Massachusetts, Lowell, Lawrence, Newburyport, all of these places inside that line sees Mars get partially covered. This is a rather amazing sight. You see the moon coming by and just clipping Mars partially so that part of Mars gets covered, but the other part remains in view during this passage. The moon moving across the sky, moving again in front of Mars. Now, for those folks like we here in the New York area that are going to miss out, how close is Mars going to come to the moon? Missed it by that much. Washington, D.C., closest is at 1046, Baltimore 1047, Philadelphia 1051. Here in New York, they are closest apart at 10:56 p.m. Not 1.1 feet, but 1.1 arc minutes. That's about 1/30th the apparent diameter of the moon. Very close. Even less than that in Hartford, 10:59, Providence, 11 o'clock, Boston, 11:01. So if it is clear, which probably it will not be, and in fact, Dennis Cassia, often when we have events like this, like an event like this, or a big meteor shower, or an eclipse, or something that's really special to look at in the sky, what happens? It's usually cloudy and you don't see a darn thing. And he refers to that as Spode's Law. You could also call it Murphy's Law. If it happens to be clear on Wednesday night, at 5 o'clock in the evening, you're looking toward the east-northeast, there's the moon, bright, big, round, full moon. Mars will be visible as a very bright, in fact, it rivals even the brightest star in the sky, Sirius, but with a yellowish-orange color. Mars will appear off to the lower left of the moon. Then as the night wears on, what happens? 8 o'clock, Mars and the moon are now noticeably closer together. And then when we get to 10:56, Wednesday evening, here's the moon, and if you look up in the sky at that moment, Mars will appear like a brilliant jewel of light hanging off the bottom of the chin of the man in the moon. It will be an eye-catching sight, and I'm sure that if visible, people will look up and they'll say, what the heck is that? And they'll call their radio and television stations or police precincts, to talk about, what is that, a UFO near the moon? I'm seeing it. It feels like an orange-yellow color. No, it's Mars. And if you have a telescope and are training it on Mars, you'll see it come oh so close to the lower or bottom limb of the moon. Very, very unusual. And then another view here, again, very, very close. And then at 2 a.m., the moon continuing to move on its course around the Earth, moves away from Mars. And at 6 a.m. on early Thursday morning, December the 8th, as the moon and Mars are getting ready to set in the west-northwest, you see that the moon and Mars have well separated once again. So that is pretty much what you're going to be looking for in the sky. And of course, as we just said here on Joe and Joe, unfortunately, the scenario is such that we are more likely to miss it because we'll probably have a lot of clouds. Looks like Tuesday is going to be a rainy or showery day, and Wednesday we'll have lingering showers, and Wednesday night lingering clouds. Unless, of course, the clouds fortuitously break and allow us to see the moon, which sometimes happens. It might happen on Wednesday night. If it does, step outside, take a look, and you'll see Mars and the moon coming very close to each other, a sight that doesn't happen very often, but will happen, hopefully, for us to see, weather conditions permitting, on Wednesday night.
All right, and on that note, while you were talking, Joe, I got a delivery, an Amazon delivery, my new passive aggressive vacuum cleaner. It comes with an app, so after you use it, you'll get a message that says, "You call that clean?" So everybody have a great rest of your Sunday. Hopefully the Giants will win, I guess. I can't watch because they're not on down here. So we'll see you tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern
Yes.
Time. And for those of you who are on my weather platform on Patreon, that's where winter weather coverage is. I'll be looking at things later this afternoon and updating some of the stuff that Joe and I talked about. So have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.